Welcome to Screams. I'm Arthur, your guide through the unnerving, the unexplained, and the utterly terrifying. Turn down the lights and lean in close, because what you're about to hear might just follow you into your dreams. They say radio is a dying medium, but to me, it was always a ghost. A voice in the dark, a whisper out of nowhere. Maybe that's why I took the job, digitizing old reel-to-reel tapes for a radio station that died before I was born. Easy money, quiet hours, and the eerie allure of a place that once spoke to the night. Station 103.6 AM-W ZHP- was buried up in the Allegheny foothills of Pennsylvania. Officially, it went off air in September of 1994, but the tapes didn't stop there. The station manager who hired me, some private collector named Reeves, said the archive ran until 1997. That didn't make sense, of course. No license, no signal, just dead air. But I didn't care. I needed the money, and Reeves was paying more than fair. All I had to do was spend 3 weeks in an old station digitizing audio, alone. The building stood like a rotting husk between two pine-covered ridges. The parking lot had been reclaimed by moss. Windows were broken in the lobby. A faded sign hung at an angle over the door. WZHP, Voice of the Hollow. I should have walked away then. The air inside was heavy, like the walls were sweating. Dust hung in shafts of sickly gray light. The reception area still had furniture, half rotted and warped. A phone sat off the hook. Not just off the hook, melted to the receiver like it had fused into the plastic shell. The broadcast room was sealed off with soundproof glass, smeared with something like ash. Behind it sat the control panel, tangled in wires and webbing, and beside it, a shelf, stacked with reels. Hundreds of them, all labeled by date. The last one was marked October 3rd, 1997, 2 a.m. Static Man broadcast. No one was supposed to be broadcasting then. I set up in a corner office. Reeves had left me a portable digitizer, headphones, and a logbook. I cracked my knuckles, popped in the first reel, July 1994, and pressed play. The room filled with vintage static, followed by the familiar, tinny voice of a late-night DJ. This is Terry on the airwaves of 103.6, your voice in the hollow. Stay with me, friends. The fog is thick tonight. Charming stuff, old ads, local news, the occasional song, a window into a town that no longer existed. I worked through the day and into the night. That first night, I slept on a fold-out cot in the back office. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the soft whine of feedback. At first, I thought I'd left the headphones plugged in, but the digitizer was off. The power strip, too. Still, I heard it. A low, crackling hum. It was coming from the broadcast room. The light above the glass was red, on air, but nothing was plugged in. I lay there, frozen under the thin blanket, listening. The static behind the glass rose and fell like breath. Then something cut through it. A voice, garbled, warped. I sat up slowly and walked toward the soundproof window of the broadcast room. There was no one inside. And yet, the red on-air light glowed. The reel-to-reel deck spun on its own, even though I hadn't touched it. I pressed my ear to the glass. He's in the walls now. Static Man. He feeds when it's quiet. Don't listen too long. The voice was thin and full of interference, layered with whispers. The kind of voice you'd swear wasn't talking to you until it said your name. It did. Daniel? I stumbled back and killed the power. The light snapped off. The reel halted mid-whir. Silence. The next morning, I chalked it up to sleep paralysis or a lucid dream. Maybe the atmosphere was getting to me. Still, I skipped ahead in the archive. I needed answers. I found a reel from November 12th, 1994, labeled Caller Incident. He's in the air. I popped it in. The show host sounded uneasy that night, and a caller's voice was shaky with fear. He keeps calling me on the dead station. I hear him in the static when my TV's off. Says he's made of signal, that the more I listen, the more real he gets. I can't turn him off anymore. He's part of the frequency. Then a crash, then screaming. The tape ended abruptly. I stared at the logbook, scribbled in red ink on the same date. Do not play after midnight. He knows when you're alone by nightfall. I had locked the broadcast room door. I didn't care how irrational it felt. Something about the place was wrong, not just haunted, infected. That night, I dreamed I was back in the studio, except everything was playing in reverse. The reels spun backward and I was listening to myself scream. Only my voice was coming from the speakers, not my mouth. And watching from behind the glass was a figure, tall, pale, face blurred in static, like a corrupted TV screen. He raised one hand, and it twitched with electric surges like signal loss. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I woke up gasping. The reel player was on. Again, I hadn't touched it. It was playing the tape from the night before, the one where the man screamed, but it was looping the scream over and over. I yanked the reel off, but even with no tape, the scream echoed through the room. I left the building and sat in my car till dawn. The next day, I drove out to the old diner on Highway 6, one of the only nearby spots with a working landline and a coffee pot that hadn't rotted into rust. I needed answers. I figured someone in town remembered the station. I sat at the counter, eyes sunken, hands shaking. The waitress, Linda, noticed. "Station 103.6, huh?" she asked as she poured the coffee. "You're the new caretaker?" I nodded. Her face changed. "You need to leave. That place ain't been right since the fires. And before that, the disappearances." "What disappearances?" I asked. She leaned in, voice low. "People who listened too long. Back in the 80s, radio junkies, they said voices came through the static, told them things. One guy burned down his own house. Another, Frank Mathers, just vanished. Cops said suicide. But his wife swore he was hearing someone in the wires, said the static followed him. She scribbled something on a napkin and slid it to me. Do not tune in after 12:13 a.m. That's when he listens back. I stared at the napkin all the way back to the station. That night, I locked the doors, turned off every power switch, and sat in darkness. 12:13 a.m. came, and from the walls, I kid you not, I heard it, a voice, like it was inside the drywall, not a whisper, not a hallucination. It was clear. "You're listening, and I'm becoming." I stood, heart racing. The red light above the broadcast booth flicked on by itself. The reel-to-reel began spinning and I hadn't touched it. No power, no explanation. Then every speaker in the building popped at once. Then silence. Then his voice. Smoother now, stronger. "Daniel, I've been growing in your ears, feeding off your time. Each second of sound builds me. Each second of silence. I wait. You've almost made me real." My legs gave out. I crawled toward the exit, but the front door was gone, replaced by a blank, humming wall. I was inside a signal now. The station wasn't a building anymore. It was a transmitter, and I was the broadcast. He was building himself through my attention. Through every reel I listened to, every soundbite, every scream. I saw the static man just outside the sound booth glass. He raised his hand. The radio on the shelf, unplugged, turned itself on, and my own voice came through. "I'm Daniel, and you're listening to Station 103.6, where we're all just frequencies waiting to end." The air inside the station grew thick, like breathing through wet wool. Every surface buzzed with a low, constant frequency that crawled into my spine and nested in my skull. I stumbled toward the control panel. The switches were fused in place, melted like wax. The microphone, once silent, was glowing faintly, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. And then he spoke again. Not from the radio, not from the walls, from me. His voice came out of my own throat. "This isn't your story anymore, Daniel. I'm the one being broadcast now." I tried to scream, but all that came out was static. The reel-to-reel machine spun wildly, playing clips I'd never recorded. People begging, crying, whispering strange words in dead languages. A voice whispered from one of the monitors, "He only needs one more host, one more broadcast to complete the signal." The meaning hit me like ice in my veins. Every second someone listened, he grew. Each listener, a piece of his body. Every late-night tuning, every replayed broadcast was building him. And now, he was almost real. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up outside, on the grass, hours later. The sun was rising, the station was gone. Not destroyed, gone. Just a field with dead soil and a twisted metal signpost that read 103.6 FM off air. I stumbled back to town. Linda was gone. The diner closed. The napkin crumbled to dust in my pocket. I left that place, drove until the sky changed color. But even now, sometimes at 12:13 a.m., my car radio lights up. The dial shifts on its own to 103.6, and a voice deep and familiar whispers, "You're listening, and I'm becoming." So if you're hearing this, turn it off. Don't listen. Don't replay. Don't let him inside your ears. Because once you do, you're not just a listener, you're a transmitter. They say radio is a dying art, but some frequencies never truly go silent. Some signals linger, feeding off curiosity, replaying their cursed melodies for anyone foolish enough to listen. If you ever find yourself tuning in late at night and hear the sound of static just before a voice calls your name, don't answer. Don't turn up the volume, and for God's sake, don't try to find where it's coming from. Because some stations don't broadcast stories, they broadcast souls. This was Dead Air, the lost tapes of station 103.6. If you made it this far, turn off your radio and pray he didn't hear you listening. If you made it this far, you're one of us now. We are here for the regular listener, not just for the subscribers. But if you felt the chill, if the story stayed with you, then hit that subscribe button, because the next tale might be darker, and you won't want to miss it.